Welcome everyone. Let's bring our attention to this moment. Let's be present here and go deeper, turn on this beautiful value, empathy and sympathy. As soon as we say these words, they touch our hearts. These beautiful values add beauty to my life, give meaning, make me experience being loved, being cared for. So many ways these values exist in our lives. So we are ready to go deeper, to reflect, to churn on these values and experience how beautifully they exist in our lives. So hello, welcome everyone. So as you all know, we have been gathering together with all these workshops, so many months and years actually. And today we are at workshop number 88 on empathy and sympathy. So to begin with, I want to welcome everyone again. And Brother Dr. Manoj is not here right now. He is joining soon in a few minutes. So we'll begin together until he joins. And I welcome our other facilitator, Priyal. Sister Priyal is joining from India, and I'm from Canada, Vancouver. And welcome to all our translators, recorders. Tirelessly, they're with us in every episode and make it easy for all of you to listen and experience in all different languages. So we can't thank them enough. And everyone, all the participants, for being here with us throughout the whole journey. So let's start with our icebreaker. Was it not beautiful video? What is that it stirred in all of you? Let's see. You know, what is that it touched you? What is the insight you got out of this video? So you all can share. Usually we do the chat sharing. We'll take 2 minutes to share just the thought that's coming in your heart. You can put one word or a small sentence. Walk in the shoes of others. Beautiful, yes. That's Annick is saying. Yeah, in France, in French, the translation this time, sorry, out of the topic, is going to happen in the second half when the speakers are joining. Sorry for any inconvenience. The first workshop part, we don't have French translation today, but we have Spanish, Portuguese, and Hindi. So yeah, Michael says, walk in the shoes of the others. The video brought us the attention to. Kavita says, appreciation for what others do. Rodi says, appreciation for the value what we have. Ashima says gratitude. So her heart is filled with gratitude. Yeah. What else? This empathy and sympathy is such a deep value, isn't it? We don't understand the beautiful love or empathy or sympathy that comes from people around us. We take it for granted, we say, but we understand. The moment we understand, life changes, isn't it? Becomes more beautiful. Swati says it's when you feel bad for someone else who is going through something hard. That's sympathy or empathy. Yeah. You feel bad or you start to understand. Right. Real says be respectful to people and even things in your life. I think beautiful journey. Let's go deeper and reflect more closely about this value in our life, and then we can share. Please be ready to share verbally. The last text I will read the message. Rehna says it's good to have a practical knowledge of all the work going around. Then it's easy to have empathy for all of it. Manoj is joined. Yes. So let's move to our first exercise. Yeah. Welcome, Brother Manoj. So we'll go ahead, not wasting our time. Go to the next exercise. Sorry. Okay. Sharings, thank you. So the first exercise, as we always do, will reflect on the value that exists in our life practically. So, what are the qualities of empathy and sympathy? And I think, as it says on the side, empathy is a superpower because it makes us feel deeply inside the gratitude for life, for everything we have. So let's take a minute to reflect on an empathetic or sympathetic act that you have experienced in your life yourself from someone around. What was that deep empathetic or sympathetic experience that moved your heart? Let's reflect on that and jot down the qualities demonstrated by that person. What were the qualities that and that is the empathy or sympathy that you feel. Take 1 minute for it. I'm sure you all have found those one or two beautiful moments where you have experienced the empathy and sympathy. So you can please share, unmute and share any particular incident, but just brief any person what they did, what were the qualities they demonstrated. That is empathetic you. And I think throughout the session, we'll understand more a bit empathy and sympathy. So, anybody would like to unmute and share?
Shanti.
Yes.
Can I share?
Yes. Sure. We have to be empathetic
Hello.
for our public.
Am I
Yeah,
audible?
you are. We can hear you. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear us? Yeah.
Yes. So, d- uh, uh, during my journey in life, what I have observed that I could not understand people's situation, or I could not empathize with them until and unless I came into the same role or the same situation.
Right.
People around me, uh, for example, my sister-in-law, I could not understand her when I became the sister-in-law or when I faced the same things. So that changed me a lot. So after that, I practiced it. Matlab, we should not wait or to go through the same situations, but sometimes it helps when we actually go through it, and then we understand other people's situations, their weaknesses, their strengths.
Right. So beautiful. So it is, clubbing with the icebreaker video that, when we come to the same role, we understand and we don't have to wait. That's an empathy, sympathy from my end. Maybe we very easily judge because we don't understand
Yes.
or what they're doing. And it just clicks, right? When we come to that stage. Yeah. Thank you, Sangeeta. Beautiful sharing. Anyone else who would like to share?
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Okay, when I was traveling in India, in Pune, at some point, I was not able to stay in the center because they expect many other BK. So I knew one Brahmin of Pune, and he has a Airbnb flat. So he accepted me to take me and to drop me there and for free. And I stay 5 days, and whatever I wanted from him, he just did it for me, so much sympathy and empathy, understanding my situation, so generosity and making facilities and being ready for, helping, for a soul which has a need. Okay, Om Shanti.
Beautiful sharing. Yeah, generosity and understanding and providing the facility, what is needed, and understanding and acting fast, making it happen. Beautiful. Thank you, Brother Mike. I'm sure we all have experienced that beautiful experience of empathy, sympathy, care, love. All of you must have something in your heart that is moving right now. So you're most welcome to share. Anyone else like to share?
In fact, I just want to add something. From now, I cannot forget what he did for me, So now he is really in my heart and mind constantly, this soul, Okay, Om Shanti.
Beautiful. So that's another quality when it touches deep in our heart. Sympathy, empathy, that somebody did it with full generosity and understanding, then we can't forget. Yeah, so not much sharing. What's happening? Anyone who'd like to share, either you can put in the chat or unmute and speak. Anyone else? Okay. We still have time though. I'm sure we need time to reflect on sympathy and empathy that exists so beautiful in our lives. Priyal puts a nice message here. She says she got sick while on a trip. Some people were a little annoyed, but there was one person amongst them who came and talked politely and asked if I needed any help with feeling better. That was very loving and understanding of that person. Yeah, you can never forget, isn't it? Your heart still beats so fast, so you feel that love, care. That is empathy or sympathy. Beautiful. They came along and helped. Yes, Shushma, you have to share. Somebody asking what I have to share is that what kind of empathy or sympathy act from someone else around you have experienced. So many things happens, so many people come along our way. Something somebody has done that is an empathetic act that moved your heart. What were the qualities they demonstrated? What is that they did? You can share that. Any experience of empathy or sympathy in our life?
Okay, there are some people who are, habitually empathetic or sympathetic, and they do it out of a habit because they know the benefits of it. And two particular communities, I won't take the name of communities, that I have been in close contact with. They have been really empathetic and sympathetic to me, especially when I was not well or I had some issues which I was not able to handle myself. So those two communities, I won't take name.
Yeah. So what something that bothers or you're not able to handle, and they come along, they make you feel supported, or it's okay, and you will be fine, or you can pass through it, right? Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Rehna. Anyone else who
I
is
would like
being,
to share
yeah,
one more incident.
sure, Sangeeta, go ahead.
Yeah. I uh, it was the incident was many years back when I went to a center in Delhi examination center to give my exam. So in competitive exams, so they ask everything to leave outside. So by mistake, I gave everything. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I gave everything to my husband, and I did not realize what I'm doing. So by the end of the exam, it was late evening, and I did not that then I realized I don't even have money to go back,
Hmm.
and I don't even have money to go to the nearest metro station. So I felt very hesitant and asked for the employees who help in the examination, conduct of the examination, to give me some money, at least 50 rupees. So one of the employee was so helpful to me. He did not know me. He said, okay, I'll drop you up to the metro station. Is that okay with you? I said, okay, I don't have any choice. So he left me, and then he asked me to wait for a while. He gave me extra monies of I said, no, you dropped me at the metro station. I have a card now, I can go to my home. He said, no sister, please keep some money, you may require. And that I still remember, this helping attitude he showed to an unknown person. calling sister, and he was concerned that she is a female, she should have some money with her. And I said, he said, "Ke, I am helping you, you help me in some
Beautiful.
I mean
Yeah.
some other day."
Mm-hmm. That's
So
nice.
that was
Yeah.
the incident. I still remember that gesture he displayed.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sangeeta. That's right. So it's a small acts that are beautiful, empathetic acts as well. As Dr. Manoj is sharing, my car cleaner, who was so kind enough to drop me on his two-wheeler when my car broke down. So that was beautiful, small act of empathy. And I think Portuguese, Lara has shared. I will request everybody to please mute yourselves. So Portuguese, it's Lara sharing. I think that having empathy is respecting the situation, condition, limitations, and choices of the other person at that moment, not judging in the sense of doing what I would like them to do for me with me. Well, yeah, not judging at that moment is the most important aspect. Thank you. Time is running very fast. We'll go deeper into this value. Maybe
Om
Rupnath,
Shanti. Om Shanti. Can I share my little experience?
later, sister. We don't have time. We'll move on to the next exercise. So that's okay. Whatever you shared, we'll share in the email. In the WhatsApp as you receive in our review material. So yeah, Deepak by sharing, will not go in detail. We saw that at the time what is needed, and when people show that generosity and kindness, then we remember for long times. Thank you, Deepak Bhai. Well, I'll now hand it over to Brother Manoj to take us through a deeper meditation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible and clear.
Yes, you are audible.
And there's no background disturbance. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so wonderful sharings, though they were less in quantity, but a very good quality. Let me just share my screen and we'll go into the meditative mode before we go into action planning. So here we go. So let's get ourselves ready to understand what action planning we have to do for these two very beautiful values of empathy and sympathy. I'm just playing the music. Just let me know if I'm cutting off, please. So again, sit back, relax. Take a deep breath in and out. And as you do so, try to focus on the conscient energy that you are. The point of light situated in the center of the it is that point from where all the values and virtues emanate. And by virtue of my being in this consciousness, I am naturally sympathetic and empathetic, whereby I do understand people's sufferings and what they are going through. And I'm able to feel not their pain, but I'm able to feel what they're feeling. That totally with them. Despite understanding and feeling what they are going through. I am not suffering. I am not in pain. This is the way that I can be truly detached, yet totally concerned and take care of them. And asking oneself that what are the other things which I can really do in my practice now on, which can help me be more sympathetic and empathetic towards people. And in this silent, peaceful state of mind, I could be able to get a lot of teachings and inspirations from the Supreme Being of how I can be more empathetic and sympathetic towards people. So with this, I just stop sharing the screen and let's move on to Sister Priyal for the next activity. Thank you.
Thank you for the beautiful meditation, Manoj, right? We'll be moving on to the action planning now. So after having seen what empathy, sympathy is and reflecting on what the activities or what experiences we have had with the value, let's move on now to the action planning, which gives us an opportunity to reflect on how we can use that value practically in the actions in our life. So for empathy and sympathy, I'll just share my screen. Just take a moment to reflect. Okay, I'll share. Is this okay? Take a moment to think of what are the various methods in which we can inculcate empathy and sympathy in our personal and our professional life.
Is the one check one.
Please mute themselves. Thank you. Try to think of the actions that you would take to inculcate empathy and sympathy in your life. a moment more. I hope everybody has reflected on that question. So let's now move on to the sharing part. And we would love to listen from you, because that will help us all grow together. So if anybody wants to share, please unmute yourself. Or you can also share in the chat box, but we would love to listen from you. Anyone? How can we inculcate the value of sympathy and empathy in our actions, in our daily routine, professional and personal life? Yeah, please go ahead, Rena.
Hello, Shanti. Can I share some more?
Yeah, please go ahead. I think we let Sister Rena say first, then we can come on to you, Sangeeta.
Okay.
Is that
Okay. Okay.
Please go.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Priya. So what I was saying is sympathy and empathy, it's a little bit like kindness. Okay, so in the world outside, there's a saying that if there is a choice for you to be right and be kind, it's always good to be kind, because when you're kind, you're always right. That's what is said in world. So even when I had no spiritual knowledge, I used to take this with a pinch of salt, because and now it's confirmed that Baba has confirmed that there are two varieties of kindness, which is Ruhani Rahim, that's the spiritual kindness, and the non-spiritual kindness, like Samayavi Rahim. So likewise, if you have to be sympathetic and empathetic, most of the times, but along with following all the rules, because if we are not following the rules, we may enjoy now and pay for it later. But when we're following the rules, we might have to pay now, but we are following all the rules, but we will enjoy later. Okay, so the choice is if you want to enjoy now or enjoy later. The choice is there. Everyone has the choice. So I think it is better to follow the rules and be sympathetic and empathetic, so that the other person is empowered as well. Because if you're being sympathetic and if the person is being dependent on you, that is not a kind of spiritual empathy or sympathy. That will only demoralize the person or despirit that person. That's what I believe. So follow all the rules and be empathetic and sympathetic as much as possible.
Thank you. That was really deep reflection. Thank you for sharing that. I think French translator Mirel has raised hands. Please unmute and go ahead.
No, all is good. She's added. Now French translation is available, everybody. Thank you, Mirel, sister. You can start translating. Thank you.
Okay. Is there somebody else who would like to share? Please unmute.
I would like to share.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead, Sangeeta.
Okay. One of my uncle, my Chacha ji, he's old. He's around 75-year-old. And he does get confused with the dates of birthdays and anniversaries. And in the family group, he does such mistakes very often. So every time people find this fault and try to correct him. But what I have felt, there are many incidences which could be ignored or which could be accepted. Whether he wish you on the 20th or 21st doesn't make that much difference, instead of maintaining the dignity of that person in the group, or we should consider his age, and we should consider the way he is wishing you, instead of correcting the date. Instead of looking at the fault he does, we should look at the way he is giving you wishes. So that choice, I find it's a choice whether you want to want to correct this mistake, or you want to ignore it and take the wishes. So when I was thinking about it, I thought that the choice of ignoring comes when people are empathetic. This is what I learned.
Right. Nice. Thank you for sharing that. It's being
That
considerate.
when
Very important. True.
yes, yes, yes,
Dinesh,
yes.
let's have Dinesh. Please, yeah, you have
Yeah,
unmuted. Please go ahead.
thank you, sister. Om Shanti. I would like to, uh, I've got two things to share here. That we in the corporate world, we talk more about the empathy rather than sympathy. So they say that go beyond the sympathy and deal with imply with the empathy. So that is only possible. What I can inculcate this thing in myself, that it is possible when you withdraw from that circumstances, or from that employee, whatever you hear or deal with them. If you are able to withdraw from the situation at that moment, then it is possible to show the empathy with the person. So it is only possible when you continuously practice meditation and withdraw yourself, try to inculcate this habit, this thing. So this comes with practice.
Thank you for sharing that. Being detached
Needed.
and standing a little away will help us to be more empathetic. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to share? Yes, Geeta, please go ahead.
Okay. Everybody has shared their experiences or their own thoughts about it. So I would not say share any personal experiences, because there are too many, right from the childhood to now. So what I understand is that understanding other people's feelings and point of views, and offering them any kind of help, is empathy. And sympathy comes with my own experience. And when I think I'm a little bit above that person. So I think that is the little bit of difference between empathy and sympathy. But definitely, empathy helps me to understand my own emotions or feelings, and wanting to help people in any way I can. It doesn't have to be physical, it can be just mental support, emotional support. And it helps me to try to understand people even when I don't agree with them. And another thing just came to my mind is that I have to check my identity or my own image, what I have in myself. So that image also can hinder or forming opinions, or having a little bit of ego and thinking of myself a little better than others. So without that, empathy and sympathy should be without any ego, any creating image, or because somebody should appreciate me. So I think that is my thought about empathy and sympathy.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see a few sharings in the chat box. Swati says, for me, sympathy and empathy are curated from complete surrender. Linda says, listening and hearing from our heart helps us be more empathetic and sympathetic. Lara says, assimilate more the virtue of humility. Michael says, developing deeper contentment. Then I can be more open to others. Wonderful. Rodrigue says, be available and be present fully. Jasween says we can put ourselves in the shoes of the other person and be understanding and non-judgmental. To the next is said to have an open heart and really listen to the people and put our egos aside. Dr. Manoj says easiness in nature, generous at heart, and coolness in the head can help me become more sympathetic. Wonderful. Anil says by volunteering and being detached. So Lara said, okay, we don't have the translation. So these are all the wonderful reflections. So if we can have just a summary, quick summary, and then we can move on to the next. Okay, so these are the sharings from everybody. So to develop understanding, going deeper and understanding the real meaning of sympathy, empathy, and then putting ourselves in the shoes of others, developing deeper contentment, being generous at heart and cool in the head, maintaining people's dignity, and being empathetic. So those are wonderful sharings from all of you. Great, thank you for sharing. Let's move on to the next exercise. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all of you for sharing all these beautiful words of wisdom. And also thank you, Priyal, for being on time or before time, because I gave it to you a minute later. Thanks. So let's move on to what Sister Moira had to say. I'll try to cover, as I always say, that I won't be reading out each and every point written in front of you. We'll be sending this to you. And before I forget, if there are any new participants who have joined, we always have many new participants as well. And if you all want to receive all these review materials, what we are discussing here, the PowerPoints, the icebreaker videos, kindly share your email addresses and even your WhatsApp numbers if you are comfortable to everyone, or if not everyone, then either Sister Vidhi or Sister Anu. So you can be a part of our email groups and also the WhatsApp groups. So Sister Moira, as all of you know, was a surgical nurse by profession. And what she had to say about empathy and sympathy was many points. That she said we are able to face challenges on our own if we practice spirituality. And according to her, empathy is the ability to be in full awareness. It's quite new because we all just stepping into someone else's shoes, feeling. But here she said that if someone is very spiritual and is able to remain in full awareness all the time of this beautiful, what we call at Brahma Kumaris, the soul consciousness, then actually these words become very short. They have very little meaning, sympathy and empathy, because we transcend onto a very higher level and then compassion just exudes out. She said sympathy is looking at something from outside at a very superficial level, whilst empathy is, as all of us know, feeling, wearing those shoes. She said that reaching out to people and having compassion and also spiritual service is when we keep going further and not just serving the physical needs of a person, but at a higher level, trying to understand what the soul needs. That's what we call spiritual service. And again, spiritual service is a very big topic at Brahma Kumaris, where it has many components. But to give you a glimpse, we say Mansa Vacha Karmana, which is serving through your mind, serving through your words, giving knowledge, and even serving through action. So serving through action and through giving knowledge is quite well aware of in the outside world. But serving through the mind, whereby I am so strong and stable, I'm not giving any strong strength and stability outside, but if I am situated in that strength and stability, I will exude those vibrations and the person in my company will start feeling more stable and more strong. And that's the way is spiritual service to the mind. Other thing is, she said that you're not alone. I mean, let alone thinking about people, but if I can consider the Supreme Being, the Divine Being, my companion, and keep his company all over, I'll always be sympathetic and empathetic. She covered this topic of compassion fatigue, where people feel drained out by the end of the day, but they don't know how to fill themselves. And meditation is the way to fill ourselves with that loving energy of compassion from the being. She covered a few things about how important is the power of the thought. Therefore, take care of what I'm thinking. It's a law of karma that anything in my life, or everything rather, whatever is happening, is essentially the fruit of something which I'm getting, because the seed I have sowed in the past, whether good or bad, irrespective. She said that you should be precise with what you say and when you say something, as people might not be ready to know what things have happened. This is particularly true for counseling sessions when, as a healthcare practitioner, we are dealing with people because they are in a lot of not only physical pain and suffering, but emotional suffering as well. So I need to really put out my point, being very sensitive enough and be precise, not be very gentle. And before going compassion to others, self-compassion, which is very underrated, I must say, we have to really have compassion for self, particularly in the profession where we are. If we commit any mistakes, it can cost someone's life, and it can create a big guilt conscious in our minds, and which can be carried on for ages or for years. And if the person doesn't want to forgive himself or herself for these mistakes, it can be a big burden which we are carrying. So self-compassion is important. She said that while she was searching for God and her journey towards spirituality, it was incidentally in India when she was visiting different parts of India. So she said this, what pulls me forward is the magnetism of God's power. And that gives healing, because God's power essentially is the only healing power which is so direct. And it is required by all of us in this world. We are going through really tough times. All of you would be agreeing to that. Also, she said that when we connect with the Supreme Source, we are able to understand that these sorrows are not a part of us, right? Because essentially the soul is a happy soul, a contented soul, full of positivity. Soul's true nature is not sorrowful. The soul's true nature is to be contented and happy and joyous. And the more and more we practice this through Raj Yoga, by regularly connecting with the divine, it can help us to become more empowered. Coming to a few questions. Right, so thank you, Sister Anu. We have both the sisters who have joined. So good they have joined so they can listen to what was told in the next 10 minutes in the last episode. And accordingly, they can also share in their talk later. So let's move on. Some very interesting questions. As medical doctors, should we be empathetic or sympathetic? A big, as one of the brothers, I think it was Dinesh, speaking about the corporate world where people think that sympathy is of no meaning, you should be empathetic. So I like this answer which she mentioned, that spiritually, one needs to be both. And when I say both, she explained, or rather when she said both, she explained that be aware of others' pain, sufferings, hardships, so that is being sympathetic. Also be aware of feelings, what they are undergoing. And she rightly said that empathetic doesn't mean that you feel their pain, but you also are aware of their feelings, and you totally remained it, because it's what she said, and this was covered as well in the meditation commentary and in people's sharings, that equally detached you have to be to give the unwavering love to that soul. So love and detachment go hand in hand, and we can still be caring while being detached, because the connotation of detachment in the outside world is being insensitive or being careless, or like they don't care about us. No, it's not like that. So general understanding of empathy is that you also suffer the same way, but no, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, she said empathy doesn't mean that I suffer just because you are also suffering. So protect yourself, have a shield or aura of your, be safe, and be instrumental in giving that power that would allow the patients to have the necessary courage to go on their journey of illness, what they are on. So I think it was a beautiful blend of how both are needed in the medical profession. A very next practical question is, how can a surgeon practice detachment and operate on his relatives? Is that easy? So I think she said in a few countries it's not allowed, because it's not ethical in one way to operate on your loved ones, which means your relatives. So detachment protects us from being affected. And she says here again, another way of understanding detachment is that I'm an actor. I'm just playing my without being affected. And when we do this, this comes from an inner space of love, and then we can do our best. A few words which come very often with sympathy and empathy is mercy and pity. So should we have what? Mercy or pity towards them? So she explained that mercy is having clarity of one's needs, while pity falls in the domain of ego. And pity is like a feeling of sorriness for the other person, which is not really a very nice feeling. Ego doesn't understand the depth of the truth, the soul, or the karma. And we feel pity when we don't understand the reason behind. Whilst if we are fully aware of the karmic philosophy and we are spiritually awakened and empowered, then we can understand with the soul consciousness what we practice, that it is what people need is mercy, not pity from us. Next question, some mistakes can be unforgivable, especially for healthcare professionals. So as I was covering this again a few minutes ago, how do we forgive ourselves? So yes, if a mistake is committed, do take responsibility. There would be some legal action coming in nowadays in this world of, I think in India, we have what is called the CPA, the Consumer Protection Act. So obviously you are held responsible. There is these acts of medical negligence, and doctors have to have what we call compulsory medical indemnity insurance. Well, that's completely apart, but it's important to have that. But we need to take responsibility and accept our mistakes. But at the same time, we are humans. We need to know that when we do commit mistakes. But don't go into the guilt conscious mode. Ask for forgiveness and let go and move forward. Right. So let me just stop sharing the screen, and I'm happy that I have adequate time today to introduce both the sisters, and I won't be taking their time. We covered in brief the summary. So let's highlight both the sisters, please, and we go on to their elaborate introduction. So we had with us Sister Judi already, and this is the first time when we are having Sister Tanya. It is a big fantastic combination of sisters who are alaukic and laukic as well. And before I give it to both of you, I'll start first with Sister Tanya. So she works currently as a joint coordinator of the Brahma Kumaris in Montreal. And let me tell you, they are professionally artists in one way. Tanya, is trained in dance and voice, having a 20-year career in the performing arts, primarily in musical theater, and practicing now for Raja Yoga since the past 25 years. She also works as a Pilates instructor, where she specializes in movement re-education. So she's got an athletic body as well and very flexible. She teaches Pilates. Whilst coming to Sister Judi, all of you know her because she has covered creativity with us in the past, and she began her spiritual journey back in 1992, where she says that she stumbled upon Brahma Kumari Center in the hometown of Calgary, where at the moment she's instrumental in serving to the Brahma Kumaris. And from childhood, she had this keen interest in the bigger questions of universe. And it was largely motivated by the feeling that she had somehow missed the day the manual for life had been handed out. And she says that she has rediscovered the source of self-respect and inner power. And also, she also is a dancer. She is into ballet and jazz since preschool years. I don't know what about it now, but continued the formal ballet training into young adulthood as well. And she also is a certified fitness instructor. So both of them are a lot of into athletes, dance, choreography, all the artistic professions. And she's been practicing Raja Yoga since 30 years. And also she's a psychologist by profession. So I think we enjoy having psychologists because they do understand how the human mind deals with values. So now a few lines in the next few minutes about both of them. So today's speakers are indeed in their voice very phonetic. And their passion for spirituality is indeed very fanatic. Sister Tanya, in her body build, is indeed very athletic, while Sister Judi is full of creativity, which is indeed very aesthetic. Through their sharings today, which are indeed very magnetic, all of us shall get an effect like having an anesthetic. Mind well, don't fall asleep. Their lectures are full of personal experiences, which are not didactic, but which give the soul energy the boost, which is indeed very kinetic. Spirituality for them acts like applying a daily cosmetic and helps them ascend to the higher stage like an ascetic. And in this otherwise fast-paced world, which seems very pathetic, they shower their feelings, which are indeed very empathetic. So with this, thank you so much, both of you, for joining. And the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Shanti. I forgot that Manoj Bhai does the beautiful poetry in the introduction. And it's always, so talk about creative. That is creativity. So,
Indeed.
greetings, Tanya.
Hi there.
We're in different parts of the country, so this is how we meet. So, what a amazing topic. And I think I speak for Tanya in saying we both are in some ways storytellers. It just helps us. So our sharing might be a lot of stories, if that's okay. But we had both thought we'd begin with a little bit of a reflection and then see where the conversation goes. So we'll start setting the page, and you've already had a beautiful hour of thinking on the topic. So this might be just more for Tanya and my sake to have this reflection. Seated comfortably, I start to reflect on this world in which I live. Through the physical senses, I'm very aware of the physical environments I move through. I can see the other people. I can see different objects, buildings, cars, furniture. Very aware of the physical environments I'm moving through. But there's also an invisible environment I'm always moving through. The atmosphere, a feeling soup that constantly surrounds me, constantly moving through a soup of feelings as I walk through the world. Feelings that are generated by myself, but also collectively by all the souls in the world, not just those near to me, by the thoughts, attitudes, memories of all the souls, create an atmosphere, a feeling soup that I walk through. And it can affect me, begin to shape my feelings. In some ways, I meditate to look at my inner feeling soup. What's going on inside can affect how I'm moving through the outer feeling soup. My inner world also has an atmosphere created by my own feelings and attitudes and memories. Whenever I focus on what is temporal, my inner atmosphere can become very fragile, volatile, constantly changing. My feelings can become very reactive. But when I focus on what is timeless, eternal. There's a big change in my feeling soup inside my inner atmosphere. The moment I step away from all the labels and layers and connect to the most pure, timeless experience of myself, simply as a soul, there's a wave of peace and calm that emerges in my inner atmosphere. Not just peace, but a powerful peace. So that as I move through the world, that outer feeling soup can still be there, still touching me, reaching me, but completely transformed by my inner feeling soup of peace. So I will respond differently. I can feel what others are feeling, but I also have a stock of my own feelings to respond through. It is compassion for the self to take care of my inner atmosphere, my internal feeling soup, by focusing on what is timeless. Om Shanti.
Om
So,
Shanti.
Tanya, what do you have to say for yourself?
Well, I think we heard some wonderful, and I do apologize in advance. I feel my video is a bit choppy, so I'm not sure what that's about, but hopefully my voice is fairly clear.
It's good.
Great. Wonderful. So we heard some wonderful ideas around this idea of empathy and sympathy and empathy from Sister Moira's class. And I think the focus for today, for both Judi and myself, was to look at it in a much more practical way from our own personal experiences, because I think that's very helpful. What do these two qualities, if you will, look like in practical? But I did begin, and I know Judi did as well, by what do these two words, two ideas, concepts mean, both from the point of view of, if you will, the dictionary definition, but also what have I personally experienced? And what is different and what is perhaps, is one better than the other kind of thing. And what I personally was discovering, and perhaps Judi will weigh in as well, but that they are actually, both of them have usefulness. In fact, there's sometimes the feeling that empathy perhaps is better than sympathy. Sympathy is something we almost feel as a matter of course, for events that are not particularly happy or pleasant. We feel sympathy, we send sympathy cards when there's been a death, when there's been some kind of tragedy, when there's illness, when there's been some, could be relationship or financial or any kind of upheaval. Sympathy, we have feelings of sympathy, we express sympathy. But, there's also a more positive connotation, which is actually there is a complicity or a very good understanding between two people or a group of people. We even might say someone is very sympa. That's a very French expression, sympa, because they're very nice. We get on with them well. We like being with them. So, this idea of being able to connect through the idea of sympathy is there. And then empathy allows us to perhaps walk in the shoes of someone else, to feel what they're feeling, to have that understanding that comes from a deep sense of what they're going through, and not just as a matter of form, if you will, expressing feelings of condolence, if you will, or sympathy. So I was really struck by this, that both of these things definitely have, if you will, their downside, their upside, and that at the end of the day, both of them, what determines their usefulness is how much personal power I have, how much inner power I have to be able to use the aspect of empathy, to be able to express sympathy without being overtaken by usually the emotions that are connected with these two qualities. And so this is something that we'll look at it from a more personal angle, but I'll ask Judi to weigh in as well if she has any reflections.
Yeah, we've been having, I kept saying that it's too bad we don't have a recorder. We kept having these wonderful discussions and oh, we should be recording this, and then we'll just sit here and move our mouths and have the recording play. Really, I have to say, you won't believe how relevant this conversation is actually in our lives right now. And at first I thought, empathy and sympathy. What's going on?
This is going to be a tough one.
But I suddenly, wow, this is really relevant. And I think when we were talking, we actually began to throw in compassion as well. But yes, very simply, sympathy is I feel for someone, which quite frankly is wonderful to be able to do. I suppose for it not to be perhaps condescending, but sincere, it depends more on my stage. Sympathy isn't a bad thing, but my stage determines, is it sincere? But to feel for someone is wonderful. And then to feel with someone, empathy has a good side and a bad side, beautiful, but could be overwhelming, as Tanya was sharing. And then I'm rendered unproductive or not very useful. And then the idea of being able to alleviate or address is the piece about compassion. And I was actually remembering, and here comes the storytelling, I was remembering the beginning of my Brahman. I would even throw telepathy in here. The beginning of my Brahman life was actually based on these experiences because Tanya knows this story well, so she can have a nap. But we had a childhood friend, Caroline, who had had a series of mysterious illnesses coming and going while her in her 20s, they really started. And she'd be in and out of hospital. And I think, that we really felt for her sincerely. She was a very active person and lovely, lovely soul, but no one really knew what was going on. And then one day she again was having a symptom, difficulty breathing, so was taken to hospital. And while she was in hospital, she was in intensive care. And this is back in the Stone Age when the rules were a little bit different about ICU. So I was called to the hospital as a family friend and her friend, but I was not allowed into ICU to see her. I was not immediate family. So I'm standing outside these locked ICU doors. And I'm not sure what to do with myself. And this little voice comes along and says, be very quiet and you will be able to connect to her. And then this other voice is saying, that sounds ridiculous. That sounds a little new age. That sounds crazy. But this little voice kept saying, no, really, try it. You've got nothing to lose. You can't get through the doors. Just be quiet and you might be able to connect to her. And there's this battle. And finally, the little voice won because I had no other option. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about meditation, but I just became very quiet. And in retrospect, what was happening, I felt sympathy for what her physical body was going through. My physical body wasn't going through it. I felt for her. I felt, oh my gosh, this is quite extreme. But there was a sense of empathy for the soul inside the body. I didn't know that was going on at the time, but looking back, that's what happened. At first, there's just that, oh my goodness, physically what they're going through, this is horrible. But then there was this empathy of, I actually started to feel what the soul was feeling because I started to feel fear. And I wasn't feeling that before. It's just literally a wave of fear came over me. And I was told later that that was the final look on her face, because she did pass away 10 days later. And it was so interesting. And I felt fear, and I didn't, it was odd to feel that, but there was a piece of me that was absolutely fine, as if I was having two experiences at the same time. And when I went to the service, again, there was that overwhelming, that feeling soup we started about when a young person leaves the body. Everyone's in incredible grief, especially the mother. So you're feeling all that, but just this sense of the soul was actually very liberated. And that I, the soul, I was feeling the grief, and I, the soul, wanted to feel something else that would be a productive response to what just happened, would honor that soul. So it was such a lesson in sympathy, empathy, and compassion. The idea that Tanya talked about of empowerment. Yes, I could feel for someone or feel with someone, but at the end of the day, ultimately, I'd like to alleviate or have a productive, empowering response to what they're feeling, recognizing laws of karma and stories, etc. But on my side, an empowering response. So I was just remembering that as we were going into this topic this morning.
Thank you, Judi. Yeah, and actually, as you're speaking, you're reminding me, as I had mentioned earlier, these two words, I think why it might have felt like a very heavy topic is these two words are often very much connected to tragic moments. So the story I'm going to connect to what Judi was sharing, it was also about the death of someone very young in their 20s, someone I'd known, I'd danced with, I knew from dance, and just a beautiful person, just full of life and extremely a good soul, very, very kind person. And you could feel how much that was creating sorrow for people in terms of, the questions, how could such a good person, why did this happen, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that, spirituality is so helpful for, which is so necessary, definitely the aspect of personal power, to be able to feel something that, as Judi shared, would honor the soul, is also the power or the ability to have a different understanding, so you can go beyond the beliefs of even what one is supposed to feel in such circumstances. So I remember going to the funeral, and this is years, decades before I came to Baba. But for whatever reason, the feeling I had was, I do not want to just cry and experience sorrow, because I want to be able to celebrate and, more hold in my awareness, how beautiful this soul was, and to somehow support that, to hold that. And I remember being in the environment of the funeral. Of course, there's just the waves, this feeling soup, if you will, of such sorrow. And interestingly, for whatever reason, the people that I was with also sort of were on the same kind of wavelength as me. They didn't really want to go into the sorrow. They wanted to just remember the joy and the happiness of this person. But it was quite, it was almost like I had to go beyond or actively support this idea of, it does not have to, I do not have to go into sorrow here. I do not have to have those kinds of feelings, regardless of the fact that that is what one does when one goes to a funeral. It's just sort of this prevailing, if you will, overview or cloud over the whole proceedings. And that actually continued forward through many other similar events. And even more recently, just, thank goodness, with knowledge, with spiritual knowledge, with spiritual understanding, and not just knowledge and understanding, but with the practice of having experienced myself, who I am, who we are as spiritual beings, to such a degree that they allow me to connect to and to go beyond what is, if you will, the prevailing atmosphere around me. Otherwise, we can be so overwhelmed by emotion. And what we find is we are then no longer useful. And so, we'll probably be proceeding now forward, certainly for me anyway, into my current situation, which is I'm currently, if you will, one of the main caregivers or persons taking care, or I can't say taking care because it's my father, my Lokik father, who is currently in the hospital. And the body has deteriorated to quite a degree. And it's a very interesting thing. And I appreciate the questions that I was seeing regarding medical professionals and how can one navigate, if you will, that feeling landscape that comes with. My hat's off, because you're constantly in an environment where the emotions run very high. And, one of the things that I was feeling or seeing, especially I had the opportunity in one day of being in one environment at one hospital. And then my father was transferred to another hospital. And so to be in another environment and to see the different ways that these medical individuals are coping with what can be a very intense and nonstop. I mean, just so much of that, you're swimming in it.
So you literally probably said, I feel for them, right? You had those.
I did. I feel for them. But I was also fascinated by the different ways. And of course, they're going to be connected to their belief system, their story, how new the soul is even, how much personal power, what else is going on in their lives. And it's so important as a spiritual person to keep these things in mind. And not just deal with things at their very most superficial level, which is what can happen. We know that just a wonderful metaphor for that is that the surface of an ocean, there can be so much what's called chop, meaning the waves can be such, there's so much agitation going on. But if you go deep, 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 deep into the ocean, and I've done this as a scuba diver. Matter of fact, when you're at the surface, you're like, okay, let me just go down into the ocean as soon as possible, because I'm starting to get seasick here. Down in the ocean, in the depths, it's so calm, so silent. And so the ability to operate and to sit in that depth of awareness, of spiritual awareness, while you're surrounded by these waves of emotion, waves of activity. And what I was seeing mostly, and actually at one point, I think I did pop up to the surface because I actually started to become aware that I was being very much affected, was how do you feel empathy when you are kind of experiencing what seems like a lack of empathy in those around you? So what I mean by that is I felt in one of the hospitals, I felt that some of the people that were responsible for caring for my father, that it was like their way of dealing with that environment was to cut off. And what that meant was you have a soul that is suffering horribly, and you see nothing on their face. As Judi started off with her definition of sympathy, the ability to feel for another person and to express that feeling becomes so important, can be such a comfort, even if you can do nothing, but to just cut off so that the people that you're dealing with get no sense from you that, we equate feeling with caring. So this is important. Imagine as a yogi, we want to be very detached and very calm to the point where we're not actually giving the experience that we care. That could be very unfortunate. So we don't want that to happen. And I feel that if we're doing our practice properly of Raj Yoga, we will definitely be able to express appropriate feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't blame anybody there because, of course, they're doing the best they can. I 100% believe that. But it was so interesting to go to this other hospital and to be met by the complete opposite. You know, this one person came over who my dad had been in the hospital a few weeks earlier, same hospital, and came over and said, "Oh my gosh, you know, he's back and I'm so sorry." I mean, she was just expressing so much, but at the same time was very professional, was doing her job. And, you know, hats off to her to be able to juggle, have that juggling act, if you will. But it was comforting, you know, and I really appreciated it. And I was really, you know, kind of aware of what kind of plus or a something that's very necessary for someone in that line of work. But again, I can't blame anyone if they can't do that, because it does require power, or just the fact that that soul is in the point in their journey where it's possible for them to hold those two things, remain detached enough to do what's needed to be helpful, and yet also express the feelings that will provide comfort.
Yeah,
So
I
this
know
was, yeah. So I'll just add one more thing, and then I'd love to turn it over to Judi. But because of the lack of empathy that I was experiencing for a soul that, you know, especially someone that you have a relationship with, I could feel myself starting to be affected. I mean, really affected. I could feel my heart starting to be, you know, it was like I was being hurt deeply on some level. And at that point, luckily, I had to leave because I had to go to the other hospital. And because he was being transferred at that point, it was just a really horrible scenario that had happened to transfer this soul to the other hospital. It was just so awful to see, so painful to see that as I'm walking back to the car, I could feel myself starting to be overcome. And as a yogi, I realized, okay, I'm at the surface and I've moved away from my spirituality. I've moved away from that support from Baba. And as soon as that was, you know, as soon as I had the thought, I was back, I was connected, and it completely changed my inner environment, you know, to one of understanding, to one of power, to one of that detachment, that I was no longer being influenced to the point that it was creating those emotions. And I was able to arrive at the next hospital in a place where I could be helpful and useful to my father, but also be able to not, if you will, leave the previous scenario with bad feelings towards those individuals, but to really appreciate whatever they were able to do and have that understanding.
Yeah, you know, I loved that experience you shared of, you know, what's going on the surface, the choppy, and really what we're talking about. I mean, this is all about balance. And I know loving and detached was mentioned in the summary Sister Moira is sharing. This is about balance, but to be so anchored in the depths of that calm and still connecting to the surface and not affected. That's really what we're talking about. And so it's oddly enough, first off, I think these qualities are extremely relevant to the time. They too tend to be connected to moments of distress. And this world is being thrown into increasing levels of distress. Even if you've got everything physically beautiful, souls are in distress, every soul. So this is a very relevant topic of moving through a world where the feeling soup is one of distress, the choppy water. But I have accumulated so anchored in a wealth of spiritual power is really the work we have to do. So I was oddly connecting it to this idea of power of contentment. The soul has to be so full, so free of desire, so full that they can safely move the feeling soup, feeling, you know, feeling everything. And I actually ended up researching, Tanya, again, you can go to sleep, Kuan Yin. So she is the goddess of compassion. Her story is very interesting, actually. But I have a little personal soft spot for Kuan Yin because one of the names for this goddess is Tara, which is my middle name. So I feel a certain pull to develop that kind of stage, that compassion, and that, which, empathy and sympathy are the children of compassion. So the story of Kwon, I mean, amazing soul, but even if it's a mythical story, it has so many lessons on this theme. And prior to her goddesshood, if you will, it's been seen that she really led such a life of purity. She really had a lot of power of purity. So the story goes that there was, and the other reason I have a soft spot is our Lokik mother. I went through the same thing with our Lokik mother a couple of years ago. And I should say, I feel great sympathy for the translators. I'll try and slow down. But our Lokik mother's name was Ava. And my middle name is Tara, which together is Avatar. And really, that is the stage needed, what we're talking about. So it will make sense when I tell the story of Kuan Yin. So there was a bodhisattva. This is a soul, and really in a culture, Buddhism, that it's usually male gods. So Kuan Yin's very unusual. But there was a bodhisattva who reached the stage of liberation, as the story goes. I will not say their full name because I won't pronounce it properly. So I just shorten it to Ava, which is the first 3 letters of the name of this bodhisattva, just Ava. So because they had such feelings for the suffering of humanity, rather than leave the wheel of life, they came back into the earthly realm in order to play this part of compassion, to alleviate the suffering. But what they found is they started to be, and I questioned, did they really reach liberation? Because they were overwhelmed by the feelings of empathy. They were feeling the suffering of humanity so much and seeing that everything they were doing was not productive. It was increasing the distress. They'd respond to 1 and 10 more would emerge, completely overwhelmed. So this bodhisattva, Ava, began to cry, and out of their tear emerged Tara, the goddess of compassion. And Tara, of course, means soul or star. So with the companionship of spirituality, that purity, that fullness, compassion, they together were able to address, respond, alleviate the suffering of humanity. But that spirituality, that anchoring in spirituality was essential. It's okay to feel. Tara is known for deeply feeling the suffering of humanity, but never overwhelmed. Incredible purity or detachment, very powerful. So that's what I'm really feeling. And I know for me, very similar with our Lokik mother, that it was interesting going through the scenes, and you can feel what everyone's feeling. Even I remember the day I was called and told that the soul had left the body. I had tried to stay there to the last hour, but as so often happens, they leave when you're not there. And I remember walking into the room, and the caregiver who followed me, I'm just, there with this body and perhaps the soul's presence. And I could feel the caregiver standing at the door wanting something, as Tanya was saying, the pressure to respond a certain way. I think they really wanted me to follow or something, to be so overcome with grief. They were just standing there waiting to see. And all I was feeling was incredible calm and peace. And yes, how can we care for the soul at that critical time? And eventually I sort of left the room because this pressure, this presence did not feel helpful. So they followed me out, and then later I went back in on my own, snuck back in. But really, it's a beautiful balance. It's sympathy and empathy are actually part of compassion. But if they're not balanced, they're overwhelming or even sincere. And I think it can get to the point Tanya talked about, where there's disassociation. It's not detachment, what she was talking about, where they're insensitive. It's disassociation. I just want to disassociate from the scene I'm in, really cutting off the heart. And I feel for those souls, because that's so damaging a reaction for them to engage in, to respond to situations that need their empathy, their professional but caring presence, by cutting off. How damaging that is to them as well. That's what I feel. So I always feel we should, for caregivers, medical caregivers, have, as I know this is what these sessions initially were about, is spiritual training. And it's only going to get crazier. Spiritual training is so essential. So the story of Kuan Yin.
Thank you. Yeah, you brought up earlier contentment and this idea of contentment. And in fact, I was also having a similar thought that because, of course, we are all studying in Raj Yoga, we're studying how to once again be immersed in peace and happiness, to have the capacity to emerge within ourselves, to be the embodiment, if you will, of peace and happiness, regardless of what's going on around us. And the idea of peace and happiness in the context of what you usually are, where sympathy and empathy are being expressed, almost seems completely impossible. That we're talking about two completely separate, exclusive things. And yet, when I'm going to the hospital, when I'm visiting, or even, I have one client who is working in a very difficult environment, often dealing with this person is a director of a funeral home. So one can imagine that is constantly, immersed in an atmosphere where there's a lot of sorrow and where people are not at their best. And yet having so much compassion, in fact, imagine being a funeral home director and just having so much compassion, and how to be able to manage that so that you're not overwhelmed. But to be able to provide an environment where there's peace. When I go to the hospital, there has to be that inner peace. There has to be that inner state of, happiness. Sometimes we say it and we think, how can that be appropriate? What's appropriate when we're in these kind of circumstances of illness, of tragedy? Happiness does not seem appropriate to that. Perhaps inner contentment would be a better way of putting it. But of course, the happiness is more of, certainly for me anyway, whatever happiness there may be in those circumstances is because I am not being affected and I feel highly useful. That I feel my presence is serving, my presence is helpful. These provide, because of course there's always been this idea in my mind that there is no one that can give me greater joy or greater sorrow than myself, my own actions. And so the happiness I may feel is because of the quality of my actions at any given time. And of course, the quality of my activity, in especially those circumstances, becomes even more important in terms of what they can provide for others who are in such poverty at that moment. And, there was, I remember seeing the difference between mercy and pity. And we know that sometimes that word of pity, or even that someone is pitiful, is used. And even though the connotation is often not just negative, but almost even derogatory, to say someone's pitiful, lacking in everything or certain things. But in a very pure way, to recognize the lack that someone has, and at the same time be able to provide something that might support that person moving out of that state, is going to feel incredibly fulfilling without me necessarily seeking that out. in a way that then turns into body consciousness. If I'm actually looking for opportunities to, almost like I become an addict to want to somehow fix people's situations or circumstances or feel good about myself because I'm helping people. It's not that at all. It's really a very natural state of being at peace myself, of being full. So that very naturally, when I go into these circumstances, and not just full, I guess full, yes, peaceful, but also very anchored in what's eternal. At this point, there's just, again, we're being very personal here. And, for this soul that's playing the part of my father at this time, there's a lot of fear. And, I had to go and fill out the form when I went there, and they ask all sorts of questions. Some of you may be very familiar with these forms in the hospital, that when they admit someone. And one of the questions they asked was, what is this person's greatest worry? Actually, the person is supposed to be filling it out, but he's not able to fill it. So I'm the person that was filling it out. So what is the greatest worry this person has at this time? And in a way, you're sort of searching for, well, how can I put this? There was only one thing: dying. That's all the person is concerned of right now, is dying. That's it. And at the same time, what an incredible thing. And I went through this with my Laukik uncle, one of my uncles, where the person was clearly at that time, that place, and being able to sit with them, and they're so agitated and so concerned and so distressed, and they're just rambling. And what would be so, I think, upsetting when you have a close relationship with someone, when someone is so distressed, so much fear, so much worry, and not even able to formulate thoughts coherently at this point, and knowing that it's getting to that place, the end of their journey in that part, to be able to be with that person and just feel such warm and positive and calm vibrations, being able to share that and to be with them, truly be with them, and not shut off because you can't take what's coming from that person, is, yes, I think, maybe happy isn't quite the right word, but you do feel, it's almost like many of you may experience this. I remember once having a physics exam in university. I actually arrived extremely late for it. I woke up late. Sorry, I'm talking very fast. I'll slow down. I had a physics exam in university. I woke up very late. I arrived very late. Actually, the exam strangely started late, so I was okay. I sat down, opened it, and a big smile stretched out on my face. Why? Because I knew the answers. I knew what to do in the face of this huge exam. There were many other people that weren't smiling around me. And so just to receive through the spiritual training that we're having through this study of Raja Yoga, that when we are faced with these tests, that can be the most extreme test for most people, especially when it involves another person that they care for. And to be able, yes, to have that inner joy because you know what to do and you're able to do it and be productive, is incredibly satisfying and useful. And then at that point, there can be sincere feelings of sympathy and very, powerful, clear sense of empathy. And to be connecting to that person, not having to shut off in any way at all, but allow yourself to really recognize what that person is going through, acknowledge it, and then be able to respond appropriately and be absolutely free and at peace within yourself. It is such a gift for both yourself and the other.
I just wanted to finish because I know we're coming up soon to the end of meditation, but as you were sharing, I was actually remembering at the beginning, especially of my Brahmin life, it seemed I was constantly in contact with souls who had cancer. And I wasn't in any medical setting. It just seemed to be happening. And there was one in particular. And I just wanted to, I remember that we're so fortunate if we can really be deeply anchored in what we call the three most important things a human being needs to know. The three dots: who I am, who I belong to, and what's going on, what's the plot line. That is just so simple and clear. That creates a fullness. So I know I'm a soul, I know others are souls, I know everyone is going to be okay. No one's going to die, just the body changes. And ultimately the objective, we have to let go. We have to master the skill of letting go. But the role of God as well, that connection to God and really fostering the connection to God, I find plays a big part. And remembering this story that the soul had cancer remission. I mean, they were tough and kept, and had a very strong will. So finally I learned they were in hospital again, and I was pulled to go see them. And most of this really felt that it was as if God was just moving me. I'll be honest with me, moving me. I went to see them. I arrived and I could feel the caregiver with them, whether it was friend or partner, I don't know, was exhausted. I could feel that the moment I walked in the room. So I told them, go get coffee, take a break, take care of yourself. So they left. They seemed happy to have a break. And I remember sitting with this soul and feeling so much, but also feeling while standing in a very powerful place. I was feeling it, but standing on very solid ground. And the first thing they said to me was, I'm going to beat this. And I knew this was the one. This was the one they were not going to come back from. I knew that the moment I came in. They said, I'm going to beat this. And I'm like, saying nothing, just being present, standing in that solid place, and really taking the lead from whatever connection I can get to God, because I wasn't sure what to say. And sympathy often is about saying or expressing, whereas empathy can be more about listening and feeling. So this goes on and we talk about a few things, and I can feel the vibration of the soul changing. And again, I feel it had nothing to do with me, but everything to do with their relationship with God through me. Because by the end, she says, I'm afraid. So she had moved quite a bit through many stages of denial in the course of a very short time due to, I feel, the presence of God's power. And she said, I'm afraid. Now, I am not a touchy-feely kind of person, at least then definitely not. But literally, it's as if the hand of God came down and said, take her hand. I'm like, this is odd. So I'm taking her hand, surprised to see. And it was the most beautiful experience because I felt a surge of energy. I don't mean to sound strange or new age, but I literally felt a surge of energy, not just one way, but two ways. I felt definitely God's power, if you will, giving her so much comfort and peace. And that's what most souls need. But from her, I got a gift. I got her courage. And that's such a beautiful exchange. And I thought, okay, that's just me. I'm just having a weird experience. But there was silence, drishti, holding hands. And then at the end, she said, I felt that. So she had So it's so important to feel so close to souls, to feel what they're feeling, to be appropriate, but to stand on the solid ground of those 3 dots, not just so that I'm in a safe place, but now God can also be involved in the response. And I learned that a couple of days later, she did leave the body and she was very peaceful. So I felt God gave her so much. So it's nice to feel, but also to be in a clean, powerful state. So useful things, as Tanya says, can come through me. And the most useful thing that could come through me is God's power, is through my connection to the Supreme Soul. That comfort and that peace and that care can come through, which is beyond what perhaps any of us can offer. So I was really aware of the importance of standing on solid ground while feeling everything. So I'm also aware of the time. So Tanya, I don't know if...
Just to very briefly, just to reinforce the idea that, in these very intense moments, we can definitely find ourselves overwhelmed by feelings. This is all about feelings. And interestingly, if you choose not to feel, it's very difficult to do Raj Yoga. Very difficult to practice Raja Yoga because it's all about feeling. And in fact, when we feel the most, that's often when we are more likely to find that line, that channel is open between us and the Supreme Soul. And it can sound like, oh, we were so solid, we're on solid ground, but no, often in those moments, as I shared, I could feel myself becoming overwhelmed. And we will experience that. But it's exactly at those moments that if we remember, and it's interesting, that's when remembrance, I think, becomes the most meaningful, is that we are faced by that which makes us want to remember. Then we're going to find that the magic can happen. So not be afraid of feeling, not close ourselves, but acknowledge it and then take that support. We have the knowledge, we have the company, we have the presence, and we are souls. So I don't know what happens next. Do we do a meditation? Are there questions? I don't know how this works.
Yes, so I must say in the end, what Sister Tat said was, let's not be afraid of feeling the feeling of people, right? And I think it was beautiful the way you all was trying to give a lot of examples and practical, not hypothetical, practical life examples of how we have shown, how you all have shown empathy and sympathy, and also how in the medical profession, I think these 2 words really come a lot in our profession because it's supposed to do with a lot of feelings, compassion, as we have discussed. Okay, so now I'll invite, we have with us Sister Claudia, and she'll be proposing the vote of thanks. So over to you, Sister Claudia.
Shanti, good morning, good afternoon. It was very nice to hear both of you talking about a very important subject in our life, actually. When we go through difficult times, when we go through those times that we know how important it is to have, other ones have empathy for that, and we have also for others. And when we feel the coming from them, it makes quite a difference. And I also share with you, Tanya, about when the caregivers don't have empathy and they just do for what I say, for the job, for the money. It's a quite difference for the patient and for those who are around the patient as well, because they treat the patient like if for just a piece of rubber, and they don't treat them like as humans being. So that makes even more difficult. So it was very nice to see both of you talking about this different part of the subject of empathy and sympathy, and sharing with us all your personal feelings. And thank you very much for being with us. I think it was very good and very auspicious for us to have both talking the same together. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. You really are the embodiment of empathy.
That's what I was thinking too.
So I'm not even sure why we're here. But anyway.
Yeah. We have an example right here.
It's lovely to see you. Thank you.
Indeed.
And thank you to Manoj Bhai, and thank you to the whole team. I know there's many behind the scenes.
Exactly.
So really lovely.
All the translators, all the organizers. Really appreciate being with you all today. It's lovely.
And I like to give you lots of good wishes, Tanya, that you may go to this, navigate easily. Yeah.
And I think it was a beautiful combo of both of you. This is the first time we all have come on the platform online together, I guess. I'm not taking the credit, but I guess. Okay, so let me just take a few moments more of yours before we go into the meditation, and just to let you know our upcoming events, as we always do, the announcements. So we move on from sympathy, empathy. I don't know why only sympathy is written. Sorry, just one word is written. So we move on to, we are doing the countdown towards 100, but episode 89, we are still short of the figure 90. So we have with us Brother Ken O'Donnell. He's the regional coordinator of the Latin American centers we have there. And he will be speaking on a very beautiful value and concept as well, I must say, equanimity or balance, called Sambhav in Hindi. And we have this silence retreat on equanimity. Our next fortnight would be everything to do with balance. We revise the Avyak Murlis, where Baba has to say something about value of balance and equanimity. And then we end with the silence retreat. We'll be having it over the last weekend. That's Sunday morning for us in India and Saturday evening for the West Coast. It will be on equanimity. And as always, the workshop we have. So we have another special soul coming from UK. This time it was all Canada, Calgary, Montreal, Vancouver, everyone from Canada. So good. It was Far East Mountain Time as well. And now we'll move towards Europe, UK. So Sister Sarah Fitzgerald, she's in Cambridge, UK. And also, along with Dr. Prashant Kakode, conducts a lot of Sanjeevani courses, online Sanjeevani courses, where they take a lot of Raj Yoga meditation in very brief formats. So she would be with us for the workshop the next week after Brother Ken O'Donnell's talk. This is our elusive calendar, which thanks to Sister Kosha for drafting this. We'll be sending you this for the people who have newly joined. If you can please share your emails and WhatsApps with Sister Anu. And finally, these are our websites. I mean, the playlist as well for the series episodes and the workshop series as well. We have changed them slightly, so if you want to again note them, it's beneficial. And the emails and the website, please feel free to share your comments, suggestions, queries, feedback, so that we can work on this, because it's the last year now. We'll be finishing this Diwali, 100 episodes, and then we plan to do something else. So let's stop sharing the screen, and I'll pass it on to both the sisters. So you all will be doing some meditation, either some commentary or thanks.
Yes. So starting where we are right at this moment, a spiritual being sitting in a human body in this world full of many scenarios, scenes, situations, moments. Finding ourselves interacting constantly in a world that has become, in fact, so small, as vast as it is, with our access to media, through media, to what's going on all over the world. So much awareness of the drama, of the scenes. Of so much going on. Feeling myself as if being tossed on the waves of a world that is in constant and increasing upheaval. And at the same time, aware as I connect inwards and remember, I am a constantly, eternally still point. A still point of living consciousness, powerful energy, who has recognized the existence of and my relationship to that eternally loving, powerful, peaceful, blissful being, the Supreme. And so I find myself as if balancing between the two, an unlimited world of upheaval and an unlimited ocean of peace and power and love, an unlimited source of stability, holding my heart, holding my mind in comfort the moment I remember. And that these three elements now coexist. I, the soul, this world of upheaval, the drama that I know is leading to a time of complete peace. And the Supreme. I, the soul, the still point, sitting in this body, connected to that ocean, the very depths of that ocean, filled with all that I need to feel powerful, stable, useful. And an unlimited arena of scenes and situations that are calling out for me to be that one, that yogi, that Raj yogi. And just to sit in that feeling of an ocean of emotions around me, powerful awareness within me. I, the still point, connected deeply to the Supreme. And that this awareness is my responsibility to sustain it, to remember it, to protect it. And then to realize that these times, in fact, are perfect in the role I must play. Drawing me deeper and deeper into a state of wholeness, of fullness, of connectedness. That I may respond with what is needed at any moment. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. I don't know if we all could hear Brother Manoj, but we always take a photo. Today, I know we didn't take the moment before meditation. We flew into it, and such a wonderful, wonderful sharing and experience. We all are feeling our hearts full. And again, on behalf of everyone, want to say thank you. And if we can take a photo, virtual photo with both of you, angels. So everyone, you can open your video.
Thank you, Anuban.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anuban.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now. See you soon again.